was, because I really felt that I couldn't talk to anybody about what happened to me. I didn't feel comfortable really with even talking about it, because talking about it would make it even more real.
Yes.
And that's why a lot of people tend to shut themselves away from certain topics and just bury their feelings about it, which, is definitely detrimental to your health, because it just causes those feelings to fester inside of you. And until you actually face them and deal with them, they're not going to go away. And I know this because I didn't tell anyone for 8 years about what happened. I didn't tell any of my teachers. I didn't tell a guidance counselor. I didn't tell any family members. I told one friend, and she couldn't do anything for me. I mean, other than listen to me and give me a little bit of sympathy. So because I didn't tell anybody, those thoughts and feelings and emotions all bottled up inside me caused me to have depression, caused me to have suicidal thoughts, caused me to want to just give up. And I wish now, I wish I knew now what I knew then what I know now.
Yeah.
Even just with the simple, for the simple fact of, speaking to a family member or something, and knowing that, regardless of what I thought, my family loves me unconditionally and would have been there for me. But I was very ashamed about what happened. I didn't want anyone to know that because I felt like I was damaged goods, and I felt like I was dirty, and all of these horrible, horrible feelings. So, that, a lot of what I was feeling as a result went into why I stayed silent for so long.
And I think this is extremely common, isn't it? And that shame just grows in that secrecy, doesn't it?
Exactly. Exactly. Because those kinds of feelings, you can get them from any situation. And I'm sure that there's listeners listening right now thinking, well, okay, I wasn't raped, but I went through this and I felt the exact same way. And, and it's that commonality that we all have. That is what connects us to each other. And that is what allows us to help one another. Because, when I went through counseling, most of my counselors had not been raped, but yet they were still able to successfully help me deal with what I was dealing with.
So what would you say to somebody out there now who may well be, suffering in some way, and they really don't feel that they can tell anyone? What would you say, Lorraine?
Find somebody to talk to. Do whatever it takes to get it out of you. Whether it's a friend, a support group online. That's the beauty of the age that we live in now, is there's, we have the ability to hide behind our screen, which gives us a little bit more bravado in a sense, because we can go and we can create a profile even anonymously or under a different name that's not our own. And we can say, hey, this is what happened. And what would you do in this situation? How would you deal with it? So there's a lot of online forums and groups. There's even Facebook groups, Google Plus communities. There's a lot of different areas online that are available to provide help. There's even hotline numbers, and there's websites that have anonymous chat areas where you can speak with a professional counselor who can offer you advice. So that's one route to go. If you have someone in your life that you want to tell, but don't know how to broach the subject, my advice would be to write that person a letter and give it to them. Because that way you are letting that person know what is going on with you without having to directly say it out loud. And you can then just give that person the letter, give them some time to read it and absorb it, and then respond to it. And that will spark a conversation between the two of you on whatever topic you need to discuss. So that's another route that people can go without directly speaking to someone when they have someone that they do really want to, talk to about it.
That's great advice. Great advice. Thank you, Lorraine. So if you're out there, listeners, suffering in any way, please don't keep it to yourselves. You're not alone. There's a lot of help out there. It's just making that small step or that huge step just to reach out, isn't it, Lorraine? Just
right. And I know it's scary, and I know you are going to be fearful and wonder about what the consequences are going to be. But I would like for you to think about this. What are the consequences going to be if you don't say anything? At least if you do say something, you are taking that step, you are taking responsibility for a more positive outcome to happen. And that's ultimately what we want, because when you take steps like that, that's when the healing begins.
Beautiful. Thank you, Lorraine. And that's very similar in the work I do. I'm so along those lines. So, how on earth did you manage to gain 2 degrees, not even 1, 2 degrees, and continue to be abused by men at that time in your life? I mean, how on earth did you do that?
Well, when I got involved with prostitution, it was it kind of became like an addiction to me after a while. Mm-hmm. I got addicted to the money. The money was very good, even though the way I was obtaining the money wasn't. And because I was a single parent at the time, trying to, manage raising my son and living, just living, having living costs, rent and food and, bills and everything else. At the same time I was going to university, I had to take out student loans in order to do that. So, to supplement, the money that I got from my student loans, I still continued to prostitute myself. So it was a very difficult time in my life. The only thing that I could say is that I did it for the money, and I went to university so that I could try and provide a better life to my son. So I did manage to graduate. It took me 5 years. I had to go 1 extra year because I failed one key course in my 3rd year, which prevented me from moving on to my final year. So I had to make up that course, and in order to do so, in order to get enough student loans again to live on for the year, I had to take a full course load. So because of that one course, I ended up going for a whole extra year, incurring, thousands more dollars of debt. But I managed to do it, and I graduated in 1999 with 2 degrees, so that I in English and math, and I was then qualified to teach high school English and math anywhere in my province of Ontario, which is in Canada, which is where I live, and I still live there. So,
wow,
and
that is huge.
So it's
huge. So we can see from that motivation, for the learning and, that end product that you really wanted, and inspired by your son, whilst you were still being driven by that emotional behaviour that was, being with you for so long, wasn't it?
Right. Habits are hard to break, right? Even if they're bad ones.
Yeah.
And so
absolutely.
It was, it was kind of like I was just caught up in this whirlwind of activity where, you know, I didn't know how to get out of it. And the only way that I saw out of it was by educating myself as much as possible through going to university so that I could actually get a career where I could work earning good money, and then I wouldn't have to do those other things. So that was all those kinds of thoughts that went on in my mind at the time. And, you know, I was also at the time going through counseling, and there were points where, you know, it's funny, when you start the healing process, you always think to yourself that you don't deserve to be happy. You know, there's a small part of you that's still, because you've been in a negative situation for so long, there's parts of you that think that's all you deserve and that you don't deserve to be happy or move on. And because you feel that way, you end up sabotaging your healing by going back to those negative habits that cause you to have those feelings in the first place. Right? And so that's what happened to me. I was caught in this vicious cycle of, you know, feeling good, starting to feel better, and then feeling like I didn't deserve to feel better. And so I would go and do something to make myself feel worse. And it was just a vicious cycle. And that's something that a lot of people do in their lives with whatever it is that they're dealing with. You know, once they get scared to be happy.
Yeah.
They get scared of moving on because they don't know what happiness feels like. And it's because it's so unknown, it's terrifying. Even though it's a good thing, it's still terrifying. And so you end up doing little things to bring yourself back down to the level of unhappiness that I would say, even though you're not comfortable with it, you're familiar with it.
Yeah, as you say, it becomes a familiarity that even if it's a bad behaviour, it's you're used to it, aren't you? And it's like coming home in some respects. And
exactly.
I think a lot of listeners will be really resonating, you know, with that, you know, right now, and in that place where, and I think that experience of joy, you know, not only what we don't allow ourselves to experience that. I very much, you know, went through this myself. But also, if we do experience it and it's taken away, we don't want to feel that pain again. So let's not fully embrace that joy, that love or whatever. Not only because we're not allowed it, but what if it's taken away? I don't want to feel any more pain. So I think I think joy is one of the most painful things that we can actually go through, because it's all a paradox, isn't it? It's like, you know, you've got to experience the loss as well, which gives us the joy. If we haven't had the pain, we can't feel the joy in life.
Right.
So yeah, I really resonate with that, Lorraine, on a totally different level. I mean, you know, my where I am now is because of the relationship with my mother. So it was a very different journey, but there's still a lot of that self-sabotage, that not worthy enough, that not feeling good enough, I'm not lovable. All of that stuff is very similar feelings, I'm sure, to what you went through, but, you know, poles apart from what we can see in the external world. And I think that's what brings us together, isn't it, Lorraine? That's what brings that connection, is we do connect and resonate with those feelings, but in our own little worlds or circumstances. And that's perhaps what the listeners are connecting to right now. Yeah, I can really feel that shame, that, you know, that urge to self-sabotage, that I'm not allowed to feel good. I'm not supposed to experience happiness, you know, because A, B, C, D, and E happened to me. You know, I have to lead this sort of life. And I think you've put that across beautifully in respect that it isn't, you know, it's not just what's going on in our external worlds. We all... you know, have these feelings, and so that's what gives us that
and, you know,
connection.
Sorry, I don't mean to cut you off.
No.
I was going to say, and that's why, like, so many people end up feeling suicidal because they just want their pain to end.
Yeah, Absolutely, and that's the only way they can see out, because there doesn't appear to be, any other way. And I think your message is huge there, that you have been in that space, but hold